Lonely rancher gives water to wounded Apache girl in an iron cage. Next day, her tribe surrounded his ranch on horseback. Dustwater, Texas, autumn, 1882. The sun dipped behind the red hills of Dustwater, leaving behind a scorched sky and shadows that stretched like ghosts across the dry earth. In the center of town, the Dustwater saloon was alive with the usual clamor, boots stomping on warped wooden floors, glasses clinking, the off-key twang of a banjo. Elijah Kane sat alone at a corner table, nursing a half-empty glass of rye. His hat was pulled low, jaw shadowed by a few days' stubble, and his eyes, those gray war-haunted eyes, rarely lifted from the glass unless something demanded them. And something did. The doors of the saloon creaked open. Dust swept in first. Then came the rattle of chains. Heads turned. Elijah's eyes narrowed. The cage, iron-wrought, rusty, about the size of a hog pin, rolled in on a squeaking cart dragged by 2 mules. Around it stood 5 men, sweaty, thick-necked, dressed in cracked leather and dust-caked boots. One of them carried a whip. Inside the cage was a girl, Apache by the look of her, no older than 20. Her arms wrapped around her knees, bare feet curled beneath her torn dress. Her black hair hung in greasy tangles over her face. Her skin was bruised and cracked. But it was her eyes that held Elijah wide open, burning with something far deeper than pain, hatred, rage, defiance. "Step right up, folks," barked the man with the whip, a broad-shouldered brute with a red face and a greasy mustache. "Come take a gander at the savage witch of the Chiricahua. Caught her myself not 4 days back, hidden in the cliffs like a rat." The townsfolk, drawn by the noise, gathered in a loose circle. Someone from the saloon hollered, "She bite. Only if you're stupid enough to put your fingers near the bars," the man said with a chuckle. "Ain't that right, girl?" The girl said nothing. She didn't flinch when someone threw a pebble at the cage. She just stared right at Elijah. "She thirsty," Bill, a younger man, called out. "Look at her lips. Dry as desert bone." The red-faced man turned, grinning. He walked up to the cage and kicked it. "You want water, witch?" She looked up just barely. Her lips parted. "No words, just breath." He spat on the ground. "You're a beast." "Beasts drink from blood, not wells." The crowd laughed. Elijah stood. He did not remember doing it. One moment he was seated, next he was at the door, pushing through into the dusk. The wind hit his face like a slap of memory. War camps, scorched earth, screams in languages he never learned to understand. He did not sleep that night. Long after the crowd had dispersed and the cage had been dragged behind the stables, he walked silently through town, boots barely whispering against the dirt. He held a canteen, his coat flapped slightly in the chill wind. The stars above Dustwater blinked like cold witnesses behind the stables. All was quiet. The cage sat beneath a dying sycamore tree. The girl was still inside, curled up, but her eyes were open. Elijah knelt beside the bars. No words. She didn't move. He uncapped the canteen and slid it through the bars slowly, carefully, not touching her, not making a sound. The water sloshed gently. She stared at him. "Take it," he said quietly. She reached slowly, hands trembling. She drank Cleo Umar. When she finished, she placed the canteen down without looking at him. Her eyes were distant now, somewhere between war and wilderness. "I do not know who you are," Elijah said. His voice was low, a whisper against the wind. "But you're no monster. I've seen monsters. I was one." She looked at him then. A long, silent look. Elijah stood. Without another word, he turned and walked back into the darkness. The cage creaked slightly as she shifted. Somewhere behind him, a lone coyote howled. The wind carried the scent of gun oil and something else. Something like change. Elijah Kane rode back to his ranch beneath the pale veil of early dawn. The canteen still hung loosely from his saddle, half empty and swinging with each stride. Dustwater faded behind him like a fevered dream. The girl's eyes, hollow yet burning, had not left his thoughts all night. By the time he reached the gate, the sky was cracked open with gold. The chickens were already clucking. A windmill creaked in rhythm. Everything seemed as it should be until the sound of distant thunder reached his ears, except it was not thunder. He dropped to a knee behind the corral fence, listening. Hooves fast, many. Then he saw them. From the hills to the north, a line of riders descended like ghosts born of the desert. Horses thundered toward the homestead. Long hair, feathers, painted faces, spears, and rifles glinting in the morning light. Apache. Elijah stood slow and steady, hands open, no weapons drawn. He stepped onto the porch of his small wooden cabin just as the first riders formed a wide crescent around the property. There were at least 20 men, all silent, all watching. The lead horseman came forward. His face was lined like carved stone, marked with a deep scar that stretched from temple to jaw. His chest was bare, save for a bone necklace and a black tattoo over his heart. His name, Elijah would later learn, was Tokala. Tokala reined in his horse 10 feet from Elijah and dismounted in one fluid, practiced motion. He walked to the center of the yard, pulled a spear from his back, and with a sharp grunt, drove it into the hard dirt. Dust rose around the shaft. He pointed at Elijah, "Where is Ka?" His voice was cold, each word clipped like a blade. Elijah's brow furrowed. "Ka." Tokala's eyes narrowed. "You gave her water, you helped her live, now you keep her." Elijah opened his mouth, but nothing came. His heart kicked in his chest. "You do not understand," he said slowly. She is a daughter of the people," Tokala interrupted. "The daughter of a sheman. She is ours. You will return her or you will come with us. And you will not come back." The circle of riders did not move, but their weapons shifted slightly. Hands near grips, fingers near triggers. The morning light caught on polished blades. "I do not have her," Elijah said. "Not here. Not yet." Till stepped forward, chest rising. "Lies burn worse than bullets. Bring her down from your house or bleed with your lies." "I swear to you," Elijah said firmly, voice steady now. "She is not here. I gave her water because she was dying in a cage. That is all." Tokala studied him. Then, without a word, he turned and pulled something from a pouch at his belt, a folded piece of tanned hide, no larger than a man's palm. He walked back to the spear and tied the hide to it with a strip of sinew. He met Elijah's eyes one last time. "This mark is our warning. One day, that is all." With that, he turned and mounted. The warriors pulled back one by one, quiet as wind over sand. Within moments, the hoofs faded into the hills. Elijah stood alone. He approached the spear. The hide was engraved with the unmistakable symbol of the Chiricahua Apache, a serpent coiled around a sun. The edges were singed. It was not just a message. It was a countdown. He pulled the spear from the earth slowly as if disturbing sacred ground. His hands shook. Inside the house, he sat at the kitchen table. The rifle leaned against the doorframe. The kettle whistled on the stove, forgotten. He closed his eyes. "Ghoul Day," he whispered. His fingers curled around the hide. Elijah Kane was not a hero, not a savior, not a diplomat. But he had seen something in that girl's eyes last night, something older than war, something worth saving. And now if he was to protect it, he would have to stand against the ghosts of his past and the fury of a nation. Night cloaked dustwater like a wet shroud. The town slept in uneasy silence, save for the occasional hoot of an owl or the creak of a weathered sign swinging in the breeze. Elijah Kane rode in through the back trail, leaving his horse tethered near the edge of an AO. He moved like a shadow now, coat drawn tight, hat low, rifle strapped to his back, bootsteps silent. He had waited until midnight. He had counted torches, shifts, dogs. He knew the layout like a battlefield. The circus camp was behind the livery, near a cluster of abandoned wagons. The cage was there, under canvas, beside a tent with oil lanterns flickering inside. He saw two men, one asleep, the other drinking and playing cards with himself. The girl was in the cage, curled like a beaten animal, but still awake. Elijah crouched low behind a barrel and pulled a small pouch from his coat. Inside 2 sticks of dynamite, waxed fuses, matches. He had not come to negotiate. He slipped around to the side of the hay barn. The air beneath the slats was a pile of dry straw and manure, perfect for fire. He lit the fuse and stepped back. It took 20 seconds for the explosion, not enough to kill, but plenty to panic. Fire surged upward in a flash. Screams rang out. Horses nigh and kicked. One of the wagons caught immediately, and someone shouted, "Fire! Fire!" Amid the chaos, Elijah moved. He ran to the cage, heart hammering. "Ka," he whispered, gripping the lock. "I'm getting you out." She blinked up at him in disbelief. He jammed a crowbar through the latch and heaved. It snapped with a crack. "Come on," he said. "Can you walk?" she tried. Her legs gave out. Without a word, Elijah bent and scooped her into his arms. They were almost clear when a gunshot cracked the air. Elijah staggered. Pain ripped through his right shoulder. He fell to one knee. Ka tumbling from his grasp. A man ran at them, revolver raised, face twisted in rage. "You think you can steal my property?" he bellowed. Before Elijah could move, Ka lunged, not away, but forward. She grabbed the man's wrist midair, twisted hard. The gun went off, missing her by inches. She slammed her elbow into his throat, spun, grabbed the weapon from his hands, and fired. But the man dropped, breathing hard. Kaya stared down at the gun, then at Elijah, her hands trembling. He coughed, gripping his bleeding shoulder. You all right?" She nodded once. "Good," he said, wincing. "Let's get the hell out of here." They made it out through the creek bed, stumbling in darkness. Every step a battle. Elijah leaned on Kaya now. She was weak, yes, but fury burned inside her. Survival sharpened her steps. Her bare feet bled. His coat soaked with blood. But they didn't stop. By sunrise, the ranch came into view. They collapsed in the barn. Dust and hay rained down as they hit the ground. Elijah lay back against a post, hand pressed to his shoulder. Kaya sat beside him, silent, then tore part of his sleeve and began dressing the wound with firm, practiced hands. "Where'd you learn that?" he muttered, grimacing. "From my mother," she said softly. It was the first time she had spoken more than a whisper. He looked at her. Her face, though bruised, held fierce dignity. "You saved me," he said. She looked down. "You first." He gave a faint chuckle, then winced again. "Fair enough." She finished tying the cloth, then sat back against the wall. For a moment, they just breathed. Then Elijah reached out. Slow, deliberate, not to hold, not to restrain, just to touch her fingers gently. Ka did not pull away. Instead, she took his hand. Their eyes met, and in that fleeting, trembling contact, no words, no promises. Something passed between them. Not just trust. Something deeper. A spark in the dark. Not of war, of life. Elijah whispered. "We'll get through this. I swear it." Ka looked at him, eyes shining, not with tears, but with something fiercer. "I believe you," she said. The sun had risen high over the dry ridges of Dustwater by the time Elijah stirred. He lay on a cot inside his cabin, shirt off, shoulder wrapped in blood-soaked cloth, sweat beading across his brow. The room smelled of pine smoke and something unfamiliar, bitter, earthy, almost sweet, and herbal save. Ka stood beside him, grinding leaves with a stone mortar. She worked quietly, the sleeves of a borrowed linen shirt rolled up to her elbows, dark hair braided loosely down her back. Her hands moved with precision, neither rush nor hesitant. Elijah winced as he sat up. "That smells either healing me or killing me," he muttered. Kaya glanced at him without smiling. "It will stop the fever." Suppose I owe you another one, then. You do, she said simply. She dipped a cloth into the save and pressed it gently to his shoulder. He hissed through his teeth, but did not pull away. I have seen wounds like this, Kaya said softly. On my brothers, my uncles, the ones who never came back. Elijah looked at her, but her eyes were focused on his wound. Were they soldiers, warriors, defenders of the land? Some fought Mexicans, some fought Americans, some fought each other. There was a pause. Elijah's voice dropped. And your father? She stopped, her hand resting on the edge of the basin. My father was not a fighter. He was a healer, a dream walker, the shaman of our people. Elijah said nothing. I am his daughter. I was meant to carry his visions, his medicine. But some believed a woman should not inherit the sacred duties. When he died, there were whispers. Anger, men who wanted the power for themselves. And they gave you to that traveling freak show? Elijah asked bitterly. No, she said. My own cousin betrayed me. He told the white man where I would be. I was taken before sunrise. Elijah looked away. Christ. Kaya stood. She moved to the window, pulled back the curtain slightly, then let it fall again. They wanted me to be forgotten, but the spirits did not forget. And now my people are watching. Elijah sat in silence. The ache in his shoulder felt dull compared to the weight of her words. He finally spoke. I fought in the war. Not the one between your people and mine. The other wore blue coats and gray coats. I wore gray. Ka turned to face him, her eyes unreadable. I killed men, he said. White, black, Mexican, and yes, Apache, Comanche. I do not even remember how many. Orders came, bullets flew, faces blurred. I was good at it. She said nothing, just listened. After the war, I tried to farm, to drink, to forget. Nothing worked. But I never let myself say it out loud that I hated who I had become. The silence between them grew thick, like a storm gathering. Then Kaya walked to him, slow, deliberate. She knelt beside the cot and placed the salve bowl on the floor. She looked him in the eye and said, maybe you did kill. Maybe you were a monster. Elijah flinched slightly. But last night, she continued, you saved someone. Maybe two someones. Her hand hovered near his, not touching, but close enough to feel the heat between them. You may have killed, Kaya said. But last night you saved. Their eyes locked. No embrace, no kiss. Just that moment, full, heavy, honest. Elijah's voice was sorrow. I didn't think anyone could say that to me. I did not think anyone would give me water, she replied. He let out a breath, almost a laugh, but it caught in his throat. Outside the wind stirred the dust. Inside the silence was no longer hollow. It was filled with understanding. And between them something unspoken began to bloom. Dustwater had always been a town of whispers. And whispers traveled fast over dry land. By mid-morning someone had seen her, the Apache girl fetching water from the well behind Elijah Kane's barn. A boy no older than 10 had ridden back to town wide-eyed and breathless. She's there, he told the saloon keeper. The girl from the cage, she's alive and she's with him. Within the hour, Sheriff Merton and 5 Dustwater militia men rode out. They were not looking for explanations. Elijah stood on his porch when he saw them crest the hill. He had seen many things in his life, ambushes, cavalry lines, burning fields, but nothing chilled him quite like the silence on those men's faces. The sheriff dismounted first. Elijah, he called out. Don't do anything stupid. We just want the girl. She's not a prisoner, Elijah said. His voice was calm, firm. She's my guest. Guest? One of the men scoffed. You sheltering savages now? She's not a savage, Elijah said. She's someone who deserves better than a cage. Sheriff Merton pulled his coat back, resting his hand on the butt of his revolver. You know, harboring a hostile makes you an accomplice. We'll give you one last chance. Bring her out. No, Elijah said, raising his rifle. You'll have to come take her. The men shifted in their saddles. The tension snapped like a dry branch. The first shot rang out from the sheriff's side. Elijah fired back, catching one rider in the leg. Bullets cracked across the porch, splintering wood, tearing through the air. Ka, hidden inside, ducked low and grabbed the shotgun Elijah had left by the stove. Out the back! Elijah shouted. Blood ran down his side from a bullet that had grazed him. He could feel it soaking his shirt. They bolted through the barn. Horses screamed as gunfire struck wood and stone. Kaya led him to a narrow ravine behind the property, a path Elijah himself had forgotten over the years. They slid down into the brush, barely escaping another round of shots. They were almost free when a rider came around the bend. One of the militia men, older, slower to react. His name was Avery Dunn. Elijah recognized him immediately. They had once sat side by side in the war, shared whiskey and muddy trenches. Avery raised his rifle. Elijah, he shouted, eyes wide. What the hell are you doing? Don't, Elijah said, raising his own weapon with his left hand, blood dripping from his right. Let us go. I can't, Avery said. They'll kill me if I let you. The moment stretched. Then Avery's finger twitched. Elijah fired. The shot hit Avery square in the chest. The man dropped from his horse like a sack of grain. Elijah stood frozen. Kaya grabbed his arm. We have to go. He looked down at his hands. The same hands that had once saluted once buried friends. Now they had just killed one. But this time it had not been for a country. It had been for her. They vanished into the hills. Behind them the dust rose. The law called them fugitives. Now traitors. Neither the white men nor the Apache knew quite what to make of them. But from this moment on, Elijah Kane and Ka were no longer bound to any side. They belonged to no one except each other. They rode for 3 nights through canyons that whispered with old blood over ridges where no white man had tread and returned alive. Ka led the way, tireless despite her injuries. Moving with the certainty of someone who had walked this land since childhood. Elijah followed, weak from blood loss, but steady in his silence. On the 4th night, they reached it, a hidden hollow deep within the Sierra Blanca. Smoke curled from rock crevices, barely visible under moonlight. Watchers emerged from the shadows, arrows notched, rifles raised. Elijah Ka whispered. Say nothing. Do not move. He nodded once. A voice rang out from behind the brush. Harsh. Apache. Ka replied quickly, urgently. Her tone laced with command. A moment of silence followed. Then a single voice barked and the weapons lowered. They were allowed to pass, but not without stares. The camp lay hidden behind boulders and brush, nestled in a bowl of land that echoed with the sounds of fire, murmured prayer, the wail of a distant coyote. Children peered from tents. Elders whispered. Tala emerged from the largest tent, towering, painted, scar gleaming beneath firelight, his eyes locked on Elijah. You brought him here, he asked. Ka. He saved my life, she said, lifting her chin. Takala stepped close. He is the reason you needed saving. Elijah stood still, gaze steady. If you want to kill me, do it. I won't run. Takala didn't blink. Not yet. They let him live. But they watched him like a wolf among deer. In the days that followed, Elijah stayed in a small hut near the edge of camp. He was not welcome at council, but he was allowed to heal. Kaya brought him food, spoke little, but her presence was comfort enough. He began to learn their language slowly through whispered repetition, through songs children sang at dusk, through stories Kaya translated by firelight. He watched how they lived, how they honored the land, how they cared for the old, how warriors spoke less with mouths than with eyes. And something in Elijah changed. For the first time in years, he stopped reaching for a bottle. One night, under stars thick as dust, Ka sat beside him. "You learn fast," she said. "I watch," he replied. "I listen. Something I should have done a long time ago." She looked at him, brow furrowed. "You think this will be enough to make them accept you?" "No," he said, "but it might be enough to make me accept myself." Silence stretched between them, not heavy, but calm. Then Kaya leaned in and unrolled a strip of old leather, aged, brittle, inked with lines and symbols. "This," she said, "was hidden by my father before he died." Elijah studied it. "A map?" "More than that," she said. "It shows the sacred sites, water paths, and the safe trails to bring together the splintered clans. We were meant to reunite, but after he died, no one believed. They fought. My cousin wanted war. I want unity." Elijah's fingers traced the lines. "You show this to your people. Only Tokala. He does not trust it or me. But if the white men find it, they will burn it and us." Elijah looked up at her. "Then we protect it and we use it." She nodded. "There's a group of settlers moving east, armed, paid by railroad men. They mean to cleanse the valley and the Chiricahua clan with it." "How many?" 30, maybe more. They move at night." Elijah leaned back. "We'll need to outthink them, not outrun them." Kaya placed the map in his hands. "Then think fast, soldier," she said. "We ride at dawn." And in that moment, as the firelight flickered between them, the lines between their worlds blurred, not white, not Apache, just two people standing at the edge of history, ready to fight, not for revenge, but for something that could outlast war. Dawn painted the Sierra Blanca in streaks of red and gold as Elijah Kane stood before a gathering of warriors, his coat dusty, his face lined with exhaustion and purpose. The camp moved like a machine now, quietly, efficiently, under his guidance. He spoke little, but his hand-drawn diagrams on deerhide, and his sharp gestures conveyed more than words ever could. "We are not going to meet them head-on," Elijah said to Tokala, pointing at a Rigi line. "We split in two, half-circle from the west, draw their fire. The rest of us move through the ravine low, quiet, fast." Tekwa watched him carefully. "And if they expect that they won't," Elijah said, "not from Apache, but they would from a Confederate." Ka crouched nearby with the map open on her lap, added, "They expect fear. We give them ghosts." By mid-morning, the Apache had begun to move, swift, unseen, vanishing into rocks and canyons like smoke. Ka climbed the eastern slope alone, carrying dry sage and pine needles. At the crest, she built a small fire beneath a rocky overhang and lit it, then threw in the mixture. Thick, dark smoke billowed upward in spirals. 3 short bursts, 1 long. The signal from across the valley, other columns of smoke rose in response from hidden lookouts, distant camps. The mountain was awakening. By early afternoon, the settlers arrived. 30 riders, most hired guns, some railroad men, all armed to the teeth. They advanced through the dry gulch, eyes weary, fingers near triggers. That was when the dust storm started, not of wind, but of riders. Elijah's decoy team thundered across the ridge, firing into the air, then retreating fast enough to bait pursuit. The hired men followed, cursing and confused. When they reached the false path, they were greeted by nothing but empty rock. And from behind them, in the shadows of the ravine, came the real strike. The Apache poured in like water, their war cries echoing off the cliffs. The settlers wheeled to defend themselves, but panic had taken root. Horses screamed, bullets flew wild. In the chaos, Elijah spotted a boy, no more than 10. Hiding beneath a supply wagon, arms around his knees. His blonde hair was matted with dust and blood. Elijah didn't think. He ran through the fray, weaving between gunfire and falling men. A bullet grazed his leg. Another tore through his sleeve, slicing flesh. But he reached the boy. "Come on, kid," he grunted, lifting him. The boy screamed, tried to claw away, but Elijah held firm, tucking him under one arm and sprinting back toward the treant. A settler raised his rifle toward them and then paused, eyes wide, unsure who he was aiming at. That hesitation saved lives. Elijah made it to cover. Ka appeared a moment later, face flushed, knife in hand. "You are insane," she hissed, checking his wounds. "I saw him. I couldn't leave him." He looked at the boy who now clung to Elijah like a lifeline. She nodded slowly. Then something changed. Across the battlefield, guns began to lower. One man, a weathered rider with a scar down his cheek, stepped forward, rifle slack in his hands. He pointed at the boy. "That's my nephew." Elijah nodded. "He's safe." More silence followed. The smoke drifted. The only sound was the crying of the boy and the moan of the wounded. Then someone shouted, "Stop! Hold fire!" And just like that, the shooting stopped. War had turned into breath. Ka walked out onto the field, standing beside Elijah, her hands open, the knife sheath. Men on both sides watched them. A white soldier and an Apache woman covered in blood, standing as one. Elijah turned to her, breathing hard. Blood soaked through his shirt again, his shoulder trembling. "You all right?" she asked. He nodded. Then without hesitation, he pulled her into him. They held each other in the middle of the battlefield, surrounded by ash, broken rifles, and fallen men. His voice cracked as he said, "It's over." Ka rested her head against his chest. "No, it is beginning." And for the first time in a long time, Elijah Kane felt peace. Not because he had survived, but because he had finally chosen what was worth dying for. 6 months later, the land between Dustwater and the Chiricahua Mountains had changed. No flags flew over it. No lines were drawn. The maps left it blank, too wild, too dangerous, too uncertain. But in that blank space, something new had been built. Kane's Crossing, a modest trading post tucked at the fork where the river met the foothills. The structure was simple. Cedar walls, a stone chimney, and a hand-carved sign above the door. There was a small trading counter inside, a resting lodge out back, and a vegetable garden that Kaya had coaxed from the stubborn earth. Chickens wandered freely. Children ran barefoot in the dust. No guns were allowed inside the post. That rule was carved in 3 languages, English, Spanish, and Apache on the post's front beam. Elijah Kane, now bearded and slower in his steps, still bore the scar on his shoulder, where a settler's bullet had torn through muscle. He limped on rainy days, but his eyes were clearer than they had been in years. And beside him was Kaya, not as a fugitive, not as a guest, but as his wife. There had been no wedding in the eyes of churches or states. Just a fire one night beneath the full moon where they stood before the elders and the children held each other's hands and whispered in each other's tongues, "You are my life's one." Ka now spoke English fluently, and every afternoon she gathered the children, Apache, Mexican, even the occasional white settler's child, to teach them both languages side by side. She told stories, too, of mountain spirits, of river ghosts, and of a man who once gave water to someone the world had caged. Elijah taught practical things. How to plant by moon phases, how to trade fair, how to read a contract. He worked with the Apache to build irrigation trenches and introduced dustwater traders to the idea of bartering, not cheating. They lived not between two worlds, but as a bridge. One late afternoon, as the sun cast long shadows across the red ground, a young merchant stopped by with a cart of linen and cornmeal. He was no older than 20, sharp-eyed and curious. After trading, he lingered. "You built this place?" he asked Elijah, nodding toward the garden, the post, the clear water trough. Elijah wiped his hands on a cloth. "Built it with a lot of help. Earth gave us the rest." The boy hesitated. "Why here? This land's not claimed. It's not safe. Why live in a place nobody belongs to?" Elijah glanced toward the well. Ka stood there laughing as she helped 2 little girls balance water jars. Her long braid hung over one shoulder. Silver beads woven in. The light made her skin glow like copper fire. He watched her for a long moment. Then he said, because I used to think the world was just battle lines, north and south, white and red, east and west, kill or be killed. He looked back at the young man. Then one night, I gave water to a girl locked in a cage. And she gave me back something I didn't think I'd ever find. What's that? The merchant asked. A life worth living. The merchant nodded slowly, unsure how to respond. Then he tipped his hat and walked on. Elijah leaned against the post, breathing in the scent of cedar smoke and wild sage. Ka came to him, slipping her hand onto his shoulder. She rested her head against him without a word. They stood that way in silence, watching the sun dip behind the hills. The sky turned orange, then purple. The birds wheeled above the cottonwoods, free and untethered. Elijah turned his head slightly and whispered, "You ever think it'd be like this?" Ka smiled. "Never, but I dreamed it." He chuckled. "I think maybe I did, too." She looked up at him. "And now I just live it." He kissed her forehead gently. Behind them, the children laughed. In front of them, the horizon stretched not as a border, but as a promise. And on that land, between maps, between stories, between blood and belonging, love had built its home. In a time when bullets spoke louder than promises, one man chose to offer water. And from that small act, a love was born not out of conquest, but out of courage. Elijah and Ka's story is a reminder that even in the harshest lands, something soft and sacred can still take root. Because the wildest thing in the West was never the gun, it was the heart that dared to love across a line drawn in blood. If this story moved you, subscribe to Wild West Love Stories, where every tale echoes with passion, sacrifice, and a love that defies time. Subscribe now and ride with us through forbidden romances and forgotten legends, where bullets missed but hearts didn't.